Hi, I'm Dan Lagani with Silver Solutions, the senior-focused home services company, and welcome to another episode of AgeWise. With every episode of the show, we try to make you a little smarter about something you'll need to know as you and your loved ones grow older. And today, we talk about physical therapy. What is it? How do you choose the right therapist? And what your expectations should be, depending upon what it is that you're trying to recover from. Our guest we sat down with a couple of weeks back, Lisa Fossett, is one of the co-founders and owners of Saylor Physical Therapy, one of the most well-respected physical therapy practices in the Southeast. So if you're interested in living a better life for longer or know someone that you think will benefit from this information, this is a must-watch episode of AgeWise. Lisa Fossett of Saylor Physical Therapy, thanks so much for joining us today on AgeWise.
Thank you for having me.
So Lisa, I always like to start in the most fundamental way possible. Even though that most people know the term physical therapy, I'm not sure they really know what it encompasses. So give us your description of what physical therapy is.
Sure. And physical therapy, we really focus on getting people back to healthy movement patterns that are appropriate for what their personal goals are. And that can range anything from avoiding a surgery to after surgery or simply age-related decline.
Let's talk about some of the things that may be unique to working with an older adult. And so, for example, in our business, where one of the things we do is we work to keep environments that someone's living in physically safe, to minimize the number of trip and falls that happen during the course of the year. What are the things that you consider when you're working with an older adult that may be unique to age-related issues?
In those circumstances, falls are a huge thing with age-related issues, and so for a lot of evaluation looks at balance and their ability to transition their weight effectively from one foot to the other. How is the sequencing or timing of muscles? Are they using the right things to get from their right foot to their left foot? Are they just falling and catching themselves literally step over step? Is there maybe a need for an assistive device like a cane or a walker, which unfortunately a lot of people have a stigma about and don't put safety over their ability to efficiently walk?
In your world, what's the thing that gives you a sense that someone is going to have a successful rehabilitation? Are there personality traits that you see, and are there things that you can nudge somebody towards to improve the outcomes that they're going to have?
For our very active older population in this area, a lot of times it's simply maintaining social integration with their friends on the golf course. And so, once an injury prevents them from playing pickleball or playing golf, they feel like their life is over, and being able to give them a glimpse of it might be different than it was before. You might not be able to play 18 holes every single day, but there are 9-hole clubs, and really breaking it down to what their body is able to do, helping them accept and find those motivational tools for each individual as far as what is important to them and how do we get there.
You mentioned pickleball a couple of times, and I don't want to slam the sport, but I think there's this belief somehow that it's the safe activity for an older adult. And yet I increasingly know people and hear about injuries through the work that we do with families that have happened on the pickleball court. So it's not this innocuous little sport, is it?
No, not even kind of. It might not need the huge overhead swing or the huge rotational torque on the spine that tennis or golf do, but it does require a lot of coordination and balance. And I will say that's one of the things that most people as they age don't pay enough attention to. And so it's a very dynamic, quick change of direction, pace. We see a lot of people who fall.
So to that point, let's go through, I'm going to put you on the spot if you don't mind.
Okay.
Let's go through a couple of sports that older adults take part in.
Sure.
The most common injuries that result in physical therapy, and the
Sure.
things they may be able to do smartly up front to avoid it. Pickleball. Let's start there. You just talked about it a second ago, but
Okay.
what's the most common injury from pickleball for an older adult?
A fall. Hands down a fall. It's not, I mean, it might be a rolled ankle or something like that, but it's usually related to impact with the ground. And that's just because a, a culmination of things, their balance is untrained to a high level of sport, which again, we don't think of pickleball as like tennis or something where you need to change directions quite as much, but you absolutely do. And once you push your body beyond the limit of its current capability, you know, the ground's meeting you fast.
Okay. Tennis. You just mentioned tennis. What are the most common injuries that you see in your practice related to tennis?
Shoulders, and the good old tennis elbow. Most people aren't aware that over the age of 55, the rotator cuff specifically are four small muscles around the shoulder joint that help stabilize the ball in the socket, and they can spontaneously rupture purely because of age-related degeneration in the tissue's strength. And so once we're doing an activity where we need a lot of rotation of that ball in the socket, then we can tear them. And unfortunately, most tears in the shoulder require surgery to repair them.
The next sport, golf. Also common that, in South Florida and other warm weather destinations. What are the
Absolutely.
typical injuries that you'll see related to golf?
Number one, low back pain. It's the number one reason why anybody sees a doctor, believe it or not. Even just a primary care doctor is low back pain. But the game of golf requires a lot of core strength and glute strength. The hips and your trunk need a lot of strength, control, and coordination in order to wind up and create the swing movement. And unfortunately, as we age, we let our midsection and our glutes go. And a lot of times for a right-handed golfer, right low back pain is the number one thing we see, and vice versa with left-handed.
But of the different activities we just walked through, what's the expectation of the fastest recovery period to the longest recovery period?
In general, for example, for a rotator cuff, the fastest recovery would be someone that's not very active, that all they need to do is their daily care for themselves or their household, and they might be back to normal life within 3 months. Someone that's extremely active and wants to get back onto the golf course might be closer to 6 to 8. And in a worst case scenario, if that tendon has been ruptured and ignored, for lack of a better term, for some time, and it's been unattached, and now is the time that the patient is going to deal with it, it can be much longer because the tissues aren't as strong or tensile, and the surgeons will repair it and then ask them to immobilize it for a long time. We let the joint get very stiff, and then the rehab recovery process is elongated purely by we're working from a negative to get back to square one. We're working with a really, really stiff joint that's been immobilized for a long time. But hopefully that leads to it not re-rupturing.
Lisa, we live in such sort of active times in terms of innovation, artificial intelligence, neural implants. What's the future of physical therapy? What sort of innovations can we expect specifically for older adults in the coming years?
I think technology and research, especially as it relates to how our nervous system works and understanding how our tissues regenerate or build strength, is only exponentially going to get better. I don't think that there will be a significant AI impact on good quality physical therapy. Just like during COVID, we had to go to a lot more Zoom and things like that. And especially for the older adult, when balance is an issue, you just physically need a human being there versus hope you don't fall during practice of the activity. But I do think in relation to tissue healing, we've come a long way with what's called PRP, or protein-rich plasma injections, as well as our knowledge of stem cells, where we resource them from, and what is an efficient alternative to operations per se. If people can't go under anesthesia or aren't ready to undergo maybe another surgery if they've had multiple other comorbidities. And I think technology in surgical approaches is also coming leaps and bounds beyond where it was even when I started my career, for sure. We're becoming less invasive, smaller incisions, less trauma to soft tissue to create a speedier healing environment.
But let's talk about you. So how did you get to where you are today, just professionally, in choosing to be a physical therapist?
Awesome. I was a soccer player in college, and I really wanted to be on the field way beyond when my body could keep up with the demands of the sport. And I really fell in love with sports medicine. So I went that route and became an athletic trainer first. I fell in love with still being able to be on the field, even if I wasn't the player. And then somewhere in my career, I decided I wanted to go the next step and treat the whole spectrum of the aging process, not just the athletes. It's very rare that you treat a professional athlete with a hip replacement, for example. And so I went back to physical therapy school. And when I got out, I got lucky enough to be recruited by, at the time, the team orthopedics that worked with the Washington Redskins. They wanted me to join their physical therapy team as both an athletic trainer for another professional sports team they had signed, the Washington Glory, women's fast pitch softball. So I worked with them during the summer, and the rest of the year I worked in the clinic. It kind of gave me the best of both worlds. And then from there, a very good friend of mine, Jamie Saylor, who I have known almost my whole entire life, since before I even dreamed of what I would want to be when I grew up, was in medical consulting. And we decided to open our own practices and provide one-on-one care to communities that really need it.
You know, you've mentioned the notion of one-on-one care as one of the points of difference for Saylor. Is it that atypical? Is the scenario what you discussed earlier, that you're in and you've got multiple patients working with a therapist at the same time? Is that the more common setup?
I would say without a doubt that is one of the major things that sets us apart, to be an insurance-based practice where we still accept an insurance patient and can still provide them one-on-one care.
What are the three things that you would encourage everybody who's looking into physical therapy to consider to create the greatest possible outcome for themselves?
First and foremost, I would find someone you like. That is absolutely key. So being accessible is definitely key. You want somebody that's going to spend one-on-one time with you. Someone should have some degree of hands-on to feel how the body's moving, in addition to educate and give you homework in between. It's not our favorite part. The dog can't eat it. It only helps you if you do it. So all those things I would definitely be looking for. Do they care about what is important to you, your parents or your loved ones' functional independence? If they live alone, are they able to get safely to the bed, the bathroom, stand on their feet long enough to cook their own meals, and also be able to think outside the box and provide resources if those are barriers to their independent lifestyle.
Lisa Fossett of Saylor Physical Therapy, thanks so much for joining us today on AgeWise and for making us all a little smarter about physical therapy, what it is, how to find the right therapist, and the expectations to have for the best possible outcomes. I'm Dan Lagani, and for all of us at Silver Solutions and AgeWise, thanks so much for joining us. If you liked today's episode, please share it with a friend. You can find every episode also by going to silversolutions.com and going to the video tab, or you can subscribe to us on the Apple Podcast platform. For all of us here at Silver Solutions, thanks again, stay safe, and be wise.